So in some very real way, through working with the quantum field of consciousness that you can access in hypnosis, you can have a happy childhood. Now, that part of you can get rehydrated, supported, loved, and become more self-actualized and evolve developmentally. Right here, right now. So that's the whole point of regression work for present life healing. And having the inner family intact, which is what we're going to learn about today, is one of the first steps. One of the first steps in that process.
And what happens if you do regression without going into this?
Well, if the client had a fairly consistent, present parenting experience, the resources are probably already introjected there. Maybe they had a good uncle or a really loving, friendly neighbor that was there for them a lot. So some model was an introject of a positive parent. But if they don't, and you ask a person to go back to a childhood trauma and they're remembering being beaten and there's no resource to save that child, they can get re-traumatized. So you have to be very responsible about putting the safety valves in place before you do the regression work. Now that is not to say that people won't spontaneously regress before you do the inner family work. That'll happen all the time. So if they can't access an inner family resource, you could bring in an archetype that they relate to, like maybe a spiritual deity, or maybe Superman, or maybe Mama Bear. I mean, they can pick whatever they want as a resource, as an archetype, until they can actually have an introject of a positive experience of an inner mother and an inner father. Something that they create for themselves. So you're not going to necessarily damage a person if they spontaneously go into a past experience, but if you're going to pursue inner child work with the client as a head-on focus, this would be a really good strategy to develop this first. So, and it downplays the therapist as being the savior, the therapist as being the supporter, the therapist as having all the answers.
That's the beauty to hypnotherapy.
Exactly. It minimizes that projection that the client will have on the therapist, because the whole way it's formulated is for the projection to go within, to their inner resource, or their higher self as the one that's really in charge. Okay? Now this particular technique, I had the privilege of learning from a psychologist named Ron Ju, who at the time was the president of the Association for Past Life Research and Therapies. And he is a transpersonally oriented psychotherapist who became very involved with the Dalai Lama for many years. He's not doing that so much anymore. I just spoke with him a couple months ago because I needed to get his permission to use this technique on my CD. See, he's the author of it, I'm not, which he was very happy to share. This process can be done for both the mother and the father, and it is basically the same outline, the same basic components. And I'm going to do this process with you as a group to start. We'll do one of the parents as a group, and then we'll debrief and we'll go over the outline and figure out the steps involved. And then I'll have you break into partners and you'll do the other parent with each other. So by the end of the morning, you'll all have an inner mother and an inner father in place. And that's good preparation for the regression work that we'll be doing down the road. So please understand that this new inner mother is a fictional character. We're starting with the background of what the client's life was like, but we're moving beyond that into letting a more self-actualized introject take place in the psyche. This is not a real person. And sometimes people don't understand, well, I can't change my dad, he is who he is. Well, that's not the point of this. It's not really working with your dad, it's working with a resource that is fatherly within you so that your needs can now be met as an adult. And you can heal those parts of you that were frozen in time and thwarted along your developmental path so they can get rehydrated with love and attention and feel whole and grow into your potential as an adult being. So this is for clients to become more self-actualized as adults. by going back to the places where their needs were not met, to rehydrate those experiences, to unstick them from those dynamics and those perspectives and those wounds so they can heal and grow now. Now let me give you an example of how this would work with a client. Let's say a client comes in who says, I'm having a real problem at work because every time I'm in front of a group of people or standing with someone in authority, I collapse. I get nervous, I get tongue-tied, I feel disempowered, I feel like I'm about 10 years old. And I'm not doing a very good job at work because of this. I'm worried about, being fired because I'm not really stepping up to the plate the way I need to with my relationships and with my leadership at work. That's a pretty serious problem. So they're coming to therapy for that. So we could potentially create an inner father and an inner mother, and then start to do regression therapy back to the source of feeling like that 10-year-old who's collapsed as an adult. The client very clearly said, I feel like a child. There's something about that 10-year-old self that doesn't feel very comfortable and whole. So we will do regression therapy by going back to that feeling in the job situation now, and have that job situation feeling be the bridge back to the childhood experience where that 10-year-old somewhere along the line didn't have his needs or her needs met appropriately. And then, after going through the memory of whatever happened back there, and it might have been more than one thing, we bring the inner father or the inner mother in to give the child what it was that he or she did not have. Listening, self-esteem, honoring for who they are, space to be heard, whatever it was. So intrapsychically, the client has that experience finally, feels the effects, and those effects move forward in time up to who we are right now. So that the next time this person goes in to talk to their boss or is in front of a group of people at work, it's not the 10-year-old who's there. It's the adult who's there. They don't get triggered to go back to that 10-year-old lack of self-esteem. That's how this process works. And in the Native American culture, there's a saying that if you heal yourself, you're healing 7 generations in the past and 7 generations in the future. And if you look at this from a family therapy perspective, what it means is you're breaking the familial pattern. You're stopping the unconscious patterns that get perpetuated through each generation. Because you're waking up. You're freeing yourself from the patterns. So this is very profound work. And some people say, oh, I just want to do spiritual work. And I say, well, if you really want to do spiritual work, you got to deal with this lifetime. Because you came in to deal with this stuff this lifetime. This is part of it. We're going to ground it in the psychology as well as in the spirituality. It might even go back to people who are dead. And when you do talking with the dead, which we'll be doing in class 2, when we do some grief and loss and dying work, and we start talking with people that are our ancestors who are on the other side, you'll actually see how this can be true. That they get the benefits of it. Because if we are all one and are all projections of the Tao or of the source or of the God or whatever you want to call it, then I heal myself, I'm healing you. You heal yourself, you're healing me. We all get it. That's why we're having a consciousness shift on the planet right now, you guys. People are starting to wake up. And when you're around people who are waking up, guess what happens? You wake up. Are you all feeling that with each other in this experience? This is the reality. This is the work. Doing it in a group is so profound because we really are supporting the evolution of each other. We feel it. We feel that quantum field. We're part of it. We're having exchanged experiences in this medicine circle that we're co-creating. So thank you for healing me. It's beautiful.